following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are back talking baseball in the zone. I'm Ralph Tyko of the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. And the man who's been doing this with me specifically on Sunday for going on like 2 months regular, and I'm getting the most inside, well-calculated information in the world. I give you Jeff Kallman, ladies and gentlemen.
And you can have him.
Well, I give you to him, but it's with a gift. You can't turn back a gift. So don't say that. And it's been a great gift for me because you teach me a lot. You challenge me. We debate stuff. We agree on stuff. We talk ball. It's the last day of the season. The Mets came up short, as we expected.
And the Cardinals just clinched the National League Central.
Oh, just now.
Just a few minutes ago, they finished beating the Cubs 9-0.
Well, in a game that Madden,
his last game,
his last game, and they did it with class. They let him sit in the dugout the last and get honors. He will be remembered in Chicago forever. He's in Mike. Somebody said it on television before. He's going to be in Mike Dickaland as a beloved Chicago guy. He will never have to buy a drink in Chicago for as long as
they may put a statue of him up there somewhere.
As well they should. How many years?
Just the way that it ended for him was kind of sad. I mean, he came into the season as a lame duck, more or less, to begin with, when Epstein was foolish enough to say at the end of last year that he wasn't going to talk about a contract extension for him until the end of this year. And then I think Jesse Rogers of ESPN put it best. I quote, "Madden's dismissal from the Cubs boils down to one sentence. He wasn't able to outmanage the mistakes the front office saddled him with."
Whoa. How well written.
That's a pretty good two-line summation of Madden's final year.
How succinct.
The deeper story is not exactly simple. I mean, yes, his era is a raging success. The finish qualifies, unfortunately, as a raging flop. He had, for the last 2 years, he had a team that didn't quite achieve what their talent demanded, and unfortunately, for better or worse, he wasn't necessarily able anymore to call his team to account before any trouble spots became chronic. Now, the Cubs had problems beyond their control. They had quite a few injuries, but then again, the Yankees this year were like St. Elsewhere Yankee Stadium, and they still won. The Astros had a bunch of injuries, and they still won. What that did was expose how deep the Cubs were not to overcome it.
No one knew the Yankees would be this deep to have overcome what they overcame. Unbelievable. Made me root for them.
Yeah, the Yankees this year achieved a status that I don't think anybody would ever have accused them of achieving before. They actually became lovable this year. The more you sent them to the infirmary, the more they found people who could come in, step up, and bring the goods.
One of them is the third baseman, and I'll never be able to pronounce his name. I'll never be able to try. Ursula or whatever. He made...
Gio Urshela.
Gio Urshela. Go to the highlights of this day. We are recording this on Sunday the 29th. Go to the highlights on YouTube forever. It will be there. He made a play at third base that was absolutely amazing. Right up there with Arrieta, with the third baseman on the A's, whose name escapes me. for a second.
Matt Chapman.
Whatever. Chapman. It was an incredible play with a jump throw to first base that might as well have been pitched off a mound. It was going 90 miles an hour on a jump throw going into foul territory after fielding a bad hop, sizzling bad hop down the line. He first fields that, jumps in the air, throws it, jump pass, reminiscent of who threw jump passes? Was it Bobby Lane or whoever it was?
I was thinking more of another third baseman who made plays like that routinely.
Brooksy.
A fellow named Brooks Robinson.
I don't know if he made them as routinely as these guys are making plays today. I think the offense, the defense in baseball has improved. I know the hitting, the exit velocity, everybody slams the ball, this, that, and the other thing. But the fielding is miraculous. I love, I'm an old school guy, and I miss the hit and run. I miss this, that, and the other thing. I miss the double plays that aren't turned today because players are out of position. But my God, the natural ability of these guys, the instincts, I'm in awe as someone who played stickball and softball at camp. Let me tell you, these guys are terrific. That's my editorial comment. Glad
Ursula is an excellent third baseman, but back in the year, you would see Brooks Robinson make plays like that routinely. You saw Clete Boyer do it with the Yankees. The only reason Clete Boyer isn't in the Hall of Fame is because he couldn't hit with a garage door.
And yes, I did see Clete Boyer, and I didn't get to see Brooks Robinson routinely.
Not to mention Greg Nettles in a pair of World Series with the Yankees.
Yeah, TV wasn't like it was. Highlights, you didn't get what we're getting today. So, but I'd be curious, and Clete Boyer was tremendous. These guys are better. These guys are just better, no question. Right now I think the jury is out, but today's third basemen are a lot more alert than they had been in the past. In those years, the Robinsons and the Boyers, both Boyer brothers, and Aron Santo were exceptions to the rule. You've got more good fielding third basemen today. Whether they will prove to be as great at the position as a Robinson, a couple of Boyer brothers, a Santo, and even a Mike Schmidt, the jury is still out for quite a while. A lot of these guys are still young enough in their careers that they haven't got as well established a jacket, but they've got the talent. Oh,
There's no question
about that. But I just want to say one thing. You mentioned Ron Santo, and you mentioned one of the Boyer brothers, Kenny. Ken Boyer should be in the Hall of Fame if Ron Santo was in the Hall of Fame. That's all.
I would agree with that. Santo pretty much picked up the mantle from Ken Boyer as the best all-around third baseman in the National League, and he stayed that way for almost another decade. So yeah, I would say
was
Boyer.
better than both of them. Matthews was
Matthews was a better hitter. He was not as good a defensive third baseman as Santo and Boyer.
No question about that. But he was a much better hitter than Santo or Boyer.
Right, he was a better hitter. He was not a better all-around player.
He made himself into a pretty damn good third baseman.
A pretty damn good third baseman, but he wasn't the best at the position by a long shot. Boyer and Santo had him
but
there.
All around, I used to have
No, slow down. All around includes defensively. That's where Matthews came up short.
Well, he didn't come up short enough that his offensive capabilities didn't outweigh it. When you were making all-star teams as a kid...
Eddie Matthews' offensive abilities far outweighed his play at third base. And he was not a bad third baseman defensively, but when you think of Eddie Matthews,
the
first thing you think of...
in those days, Matthews is my first-string third baseman.
If I'm choosing a team, Mike Schmidt is my first-string third baseman.
Oh, yeah, but that was way after from my day, I'm talking. And your day, too. You're no spring chicken, young man.
I'm not a spring chicken, but I saw all these gentlemen play. And between seeing them play and looking deeper into their performance papers, I am saying that my first-string third baseman is going to be Mike Schmidt.
At this point,
my second string because of his glove is going to be Brooks Robinson.
Huh? That's not a bad choice because he made himself
do a lot worse.
Into a hitter, just like Matthews made himself into a really good fielder. He'll never get the acclaim that those other guys will get, and you could say Greg Nettles. As a fielder.
Greg Nettles was a terrific fielder.
Right.
In the 70s, he was one of the very few third basemen who could match what Brooks Robinson had done. The guy was smart third baseman. He was an acrobatic third baseman. If Clete Boyer could throw them out from his knees and Brooks Robinson could throw them out on the run the other way into foul territory, Greg Nettles could do both. Could have done both at once. He was that good, especially in a couple of World Series.
Yeah, and not like Clete Boyer wasn't equally as good defensively. And
Clete Boyer may actually have been the greatest defensive third baseman ever to play the game. The problem with that, and it's the reason why he's not in the Hall of Fame, is that he couldn't hit.
Yeah, well,
it took a very long time for Hall of Fame voters to appreciate defense as being just as vital in winning games as offense was.
Right, and you might say if Maz is in, Clete Boyer should be in.
Well, in a way, yeah, and in a way, no, because when Bill Mazeroski retired, he had the best defensive statistics of any player ever at any position. That was when he retired.
Really?
And what Mazeroski had to sell to the Hall of Fame was purely defense, but Mazeroski could also hit a little bit, and I'm not just talking about the 1960 World Series.
No,
Mazeroski could actually hit a little bit.
He was a terrific number 8 hitter.
Clete Boyer wasn't even that good a hitter. It's not for lack of trying. I do know from things I've read about the Yankees in those years that Boyer worked his tail off trying to improve his hitting.
Okay. He also had a manager that wasn't really encouraging at all to infield. He was very, very hard on his players, and that's Stengel. Now, you can't say that it didn't work out for him, but he wasn't the kind of guy that could encourage a guy to get better. He just pitted one against the other, and they, from McDougal to all of them.
Stengel's thing was he wanted people who could execute. If you could execute whichever way, he'd be behind you even if he wasn't going to give you a pat on the back or a verbal bubble bath every day of your life. I think you have to remember, too, Boyer's career in the majors began more or less when Stengel was at the end of the line, so he didn't really get as much chance to convince Stengel as Ralph Houk got with him.
True. Very true. But there was always competition in that infield. Andy Carey moving around.
Well, Stengel's
Jerry
practice.
Lumpy.
And moving them around. Yeah, the whole point is A, you're trying to win a ball game, and B, even if he wasn't going to phrase it this way, Stengel was a big believer in putting his players into places where they could win and succeed. Mm-hmm. That was a lot of the animation behind his way of platooning.
Well,
he wanted the right guys in the right places at the right times, no matter what point in the ball game it was. Even if if it needed to bring in his best relief pitcher in the third inning, if that's what it took to win a game, he would do it.
What does it do for a guy's head? And we're talking about Clete Boyer. I don't know if it's the World Series or a key game, any game, pinch hits for him in the first inning.
I would have to look that game up.
That was true. He pissed him off.
Because if there was one thing above all that Clete Boyer did pride himself on, it was his defense.
Oh yeah.
He knew he wasn't any great shakes with a bat, but he also knew that he was liable to save the Yankees a couple of runs with his glove.
Well, that would mess with your head and I'm sure if memory serves right, and it often does, it was a World Series game, and if not the first, the second inning, his first at bat. Let's put it that way. But, how can you second guess Casey, the old professor, who won everywhere he went until he came, well, not everywhere. He lost with the Dodgers, lost with the Braves. And as Warren Spahn would say, I knew you before you were smart, before you were a genius, and I knew you after you were a genius. He was so horrible with the Mets. I just did this date in New York Mets history, and this date in 1964, Casey was rehired for the 65 season, despite losing 100 games a year for the first three years. So.
And you make it sound like it was all. And you make it sound like it was all Stengel's fault, as if the fact that he was
it wasn't. It wasn't. But if they were looking at that point in history of the Mets, if they were looking to do anything else but entertain the writers at that point,
they were doing a lot more. They were doing quite a bit more than that. We know this now.
Well, we do.
What they were doing while Stengel presided over Payson Brothers and Grant and Bailey's circus was building a system that was aimed at providing fruit a few years down the road. Stengel's presence gave them credit.
Freddie Herzog.
Bingo. He didn't start until 1966. First as their third base coach, and then as their director of player development. Stengel's presence gave the Mets credibility as a franchise, even if the product on the field was Abbott pitching to Costello, the four Marx brothers in the infield, the three Stooges in the outfield, the Harlem Globetrotters in the bullpen, and the Keystone Cops on the bench, with Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton on the coaching lines.
Very good. That's a classic.
And Stengel, thank you. I invented that one myself.
All right.
And Stengel's issue in those years, and he was often subject to severe criticism even then, in his defense, Stengel would have said, and quite a few people would have agreed, that the early Mets were made up of veterans near the end of the string who seemed befuddled and who didn't want to be taught. It wasn't until after Stengel's career-ending injury in 1965 that little by little you started to see young players coming to the Mets who seemed like they actually had something between their shoulders and wanted to listen and learn and play the game. It took a few years, but that was the purpose.
Well, it took some development of guys like Cleon Jones and Swoboda, who came to them very early. And
Swoboda first poked his nose out of his hole in 1965.
Tug McGraw.
Mm-hmm.
Pardon me?
Yes, Swoboda poked his nose out of his hole the first time in 1965. Likewise, McGraw, and likewise Jones. I think Jones may have had
Jones was earlier, 62.
I want to say his first cup of coffee was 63.
Right. And he has. We might have mentioned this on a few shows. The Mets are bringing back these old guys, Shamsky and all these guys. Credit Jay Hurwitz with that for the Mets. He's in charge of their alumni. And bringing back Cleon Jones and seeing how he's lived his life in an exemplary way, helping kids and this and that. It's really nice. Small little things that make a Mets fan feel warm. Because we watched him grow up. He was a kid, 1963. How old could have he been? From Alabama, and coming to the big city, and then seeing them do well, him doing well with Tommy A.G. and them owning a bar close to where I grew up in Corona. I grew up in Jackson Heights, and they owned a bar on the way to Shea Stadium, and it's just pretty cool being a Met fan, even on the day that we're not going anywhere. We have teams that are going to the playoffs, and I know that this has been a disappointing year on some respects, but you'll have to agree with me. They have a foundation built with Rosario and Alfonso and
Alonso.
Alonso. Yeah, I'm great with names. Oh, by the way, you're an Angels fan. You may be getting. We were talking about Joe Madden. There are rumors that he's coming home to the Angels. Have you? There
are rumors that the Angels might be willing to fire Brad Ausmus. Actually, it started last week that rumors began that the Angels would be willing to fire Brad Ausmus if Madden became available. Now Madden's available, and the Angels may not be the only club in his mix. There are further speculations that the Mets, the Phillies, and the Padres have him on their radars.
Well, my friend Marty...
Madden will not be unemployed for very long. It's just going to be a question of who's going to employ him.
Would Madden want to be employed by a general manager that makes the decisions? And is Wilpon willing to pay two managers to manage? One a high-priced one.
Well, let's see if Mickey Callaway goes to. Let's see if Mickey Callaway does go to the electric chair first, and then we'll take it from there. Right now, until Callaway is actually out, it's merely speculation.
Well, whether they can agree with Madden may be the deciding factor whether Callaway goes or stays. I think they'll make that decision.
They could not do that legally without being slapped heavily with major league discipline for. I mean, I know Madden would not be technically employed by a club, but there would be people looking a little less than favorable on that if they're talking to him before they decide Callaway's status. Whatever else you can say is wrong with the Wilpon, stupid is not always true about them. And I don't think they're going to be talking to any managerial candidates outright until they decide once and for all whether Callaway is going to the electric chair, so to say.
Well, I don't.
They would look even more foolish than they have already looked.
Immoral in baseball.
I don't know if it. I don't say it's immoral. I just say it's not a good look. If you're going to get rid of your manager, get rid of him and then start talking to candidates.
Well, that would be true if you were replacing him with your third base coach, with the manager.
It's true. It's true. No matter how you're going to who you're going to replace him with, it's just not a good look.
But to talk to him, to have him to know what his feelings are, can he work with Callaway?
Would you trust anyone?
Can Madden
with Madden
work with?
All right, let me put this question to you: if you were Joe Madden, and the Mets were talking to you about taking their job before they fired the incumbent, would you trust them? I wouldn't.
I don't know. Maybe the decision of Joe Madden to come to them would force them to.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Callaway,
I am.
Just like.
Let me repeat. If you're Joe Madden, you are now unemployed and legally able to seek employment elsewhere, and the Mets come to you with a proposition to manage them before they have let go of the incumbent. Would you trust them? I wouldn't. Well,
they could come to Madden not with a proposition, with a feeler. A feeler.
Reality check. Just going to any candidate with a feeler as a possible manager is the next best thing to inviting him to a job interview.
Right. So there's that technicality. We're not offering you anything. We haven't made a decision yet.
It may be a technicality, but when you are talking about prospective boss-employee relations, it's also a trust issue. And if I'm Joe Madden and the Mets come to me, even just to feel me out as to whether or not I would want that job, while they still have an incumbent who has not been fired officially, I'm not going to be feeling all that trusting of them.
Well, you'd come to,
and that would be true involving any team that might be interested in making him their next manager. The way the Yankees did in 1964 with one of the sleaziest back channel plays in baseball history. Yeah, that's a great look. It's a look I would not trust.
Well, I can't say it's a great look. You're talking about Houck?
I'm talking about
how
Ralph Houck.
Johnny Keane and Yogi Berra.
I'm talking about how Ralph Houck back channeled his way to find out that Johnny Keane was definitely interested in the Yankee managing job if Yogi Berra was going to be canned at the end of 1964, and Houck had made it rather simple enough for Keane to understand. Berra was going to be gone no matter how that Yankee season ended, and what happened next upended everybody in baseball.
Right, because they won the pennant.
Because the Cardinals ended up surviving the 1964 National League pennant race, and the Yankees ended up coming back to win the American League pennant. The Cardinals won a World Series in 7 thrillers, and the next day both managers were out, and it was a switch play. Keane went to a press conference that Gussie Busch called to announce he was going to rehire him, and Keane handed him his letter of resignation. At about the same time, Berra walked into the Yankee offices expecting to talk about 1965 and came out with his head on a plate. And Keane was named the next Yankee manager. You still think back channeling's a good look? Just remember 1964 in New York.
It's not a good look, but I can say that it's the way of the world.
It may be the way of the world, but you don't have to like the look, and if you're Joe Madden, you don't have to trust.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens.
Well, like I said, the rumor mill now grinds around the Mets, the Padres, and the Phillies, as well as the Angels, being possible new employers for Madden, so we're going to see what happens. Right now, at this very minute, they're in the top of the 11th in Citi Field, and the Braves are up 6-4. So technically, Mickey Callaway is still employed.
Yes, he is. But
he may stay technically employed until the end of the postseason, depending on how anxious or ornery the Mets front office might be feeling.
Well, when you consider the fact that he batted Cano cleanup today, what difference does it make if he's in there? The GM is absolutely pulling the strings, and if this wasn't a sign that Mickey is gone, I don't know.
I sometimes wonder. I sometimes have been thinking in the last couple of weeks that Callaway's may not be the only Met head to roll. I can't help wondering if the Wilpons could execute Van Volkswagen too.
Whoa, that would be nice. And then they can bring in Chaim from Tampa and hire Madden. And
they're not going to get Chaim. They're not going to get Chaim out of Tampa Bay. No way, really? Especially not with the Rays. Not with the Rays going to the wild card game. And especially not with the fact that the Rays, like the A's, hey, guess what? Look, man, no tanking. They've stayed competitive, and now they're going to the wild card game against each other, and they didn't tank.
Yeah,
there's no way anybody. I don't think there's any way anybody gets Chaim out of Tampa Bay. Not yet.
It would have been nice if the Mets would have hired him instead of Van Brody.
Oh, unfortunately, they didn't.
Yeah. Hey, would you talk to me a little bit about your subject of the week, which is Justin Verlander?
He found a very unique. He found a unique way to make history Saturday night.
Listen to this, folks. This guy has some amazing facts for you.
He started against the Angels Saturday night in Anaheim. He entered the game needing 6 strikeouts to reach 3,000 lifetime. Now, it's a meaningless game. The Astros already have the American League West in the bank. They had it there about a week or so ago. So, in the 4th inning, he throws Cole Calhoun a down-and-in slider on 2-2, and Calhoun swings and misses, and it's strikeout number 3,000. And catcher Robinson Chirinos can't handle the pitch. He's moving toward the inside anyway, but the ball gets past his glove and off his foot and squirts away far enough for Calhoun to reach base. The next man up is the Angels shortstop, and he hit the first pitch center field fence. That makes Justin Verlander the first pitcher in Major League history to join the 3,000 strikeout club and surrender a home run to the next hitter up after he gets 3,000. And then 2 innings later,
how did you come up with the stat?
It's easy. I looked up all 18 games by the pitchers who got their 3,000th strikeout. He's the only one. I can tell you all those games and what happened to the next hitter up after the milestone strikeout, starting with Walter Johnson.
What happened with old Wally?
The milestone strikeout was on July 22nd, 1923, against the Indians. The victim was Stan Kovaleski, the Indians pitcher. The next hitter up was Charlie Jameson. He flied out to left.
Kovaleski plays good in my baseball league, my dice baseball leagues. He was a terrific pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
Starter, reliever,
right.
left.
He is also 2 pitchers to be strikeout victims number 3,000 for a couple of pitches.
Was there ever a time that 2 pitchers pitched against each other, both with more than 3,000 strikeouts?
I'm sure there was. I would have to look it up because I don't know it off the top of my head. What I was going to tell you was that the other pitcher who struck out a pitcher for number 3,000 was Pedro Martinez. When he was with the Mets in 2007, he struck out Aaron Harang of the Reds in the bottom of the 2nd. And the next batter up, nobody, because that one retired the side. As a matter of fact, 8 pitchers number 3,000 to retire the side. 3 of them, the 3,000 strikeout meant them striking out the side. 2 of them walked the next man up. 1 of the 2 loaded the bases with that walk. That was Bert Blyleven.
Now,
and he
why
escaped,
wouldn't
and he
the stat
escaped the
carry
jam.
over to the next inning?
Why wouldn't what carry over to the next inning?
The stat of the next batter he faced, whatever it is, that could be the next inning.
Well, I was talking about in the same inning.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and 2 of them got ground outs from the next batters up in the inning. 3 of them got fly outs. And like I said, Walter Johnson and Pedro Martinez struck out fellow pitchers for the milestones. Now, in the same Saturday night game, Verlander faced Calhoun again in the 6th inning, and that strikeout made Justin Verlander a 300 strikeout pitcher for this season. He is thus also the first pitcher ever. No, the second. He's the second Astro to do it. Nolan Ryan was the first, but Verlander, I think, is also the only pitcher to get number 3,000 for his career and number 300 for the season in the same game with the same hitter as his victims. He got Calhoun twice.
Very interesting stat. Hey, you've given us quite a show yet again, Mister. Thank you.
I'll give you one more about Verlander.
Okay.
He is the second 3,000 strikeout pitcher whose 3,000th strikeout ended up with the hitter reaching base. Phil Niekro had that happen to him against the Rangers in 1984 when he struck out Larry Parrish. But as you might expect from his knuckleball, it knuckled right past catcher Butch Weiniger, and Parrish reached first.
The incredible stat man, Jeff Kallman. Not only a stat man, but a converser. You know, you're a human that's into stats. A lot of stat people, they don't see the humanity of the game. And that's why I love talking to you. Thanks for giving me a good Sunday.
Well, my thing has always been statistics are the lifeblood of baseball, but the humans who play the game are the human blood of it. You don't have one without the other, but if you don't marry the 2 together, you're giving yourself the incomplete picture.
And you don't just talk a good game. You don't just say the phrase. You live it in your conversation. I really appreciate that. You're fun for me to talk to. Let's put it that way. Because statistics don't interest me as much as humanity, but you bring statistics to just kind of highlight the humanity as opposed to the other way around. And I'm thrilled to do this on a regular basis.
If only we can get some more general managers who can figure out how to humanize the stats in balance, the game would be a lot better off.
Absolutely. The Frank Cashins of the day. He's the guy that comes
Don't get me started on the bow tie.
Not one of your favorites by the tone of your voice.
Let's put it this way. How many others can you name who built up a phenomenal team and then started taking it apart almost before the World Series parade was over?
Yeah. He took a lot of the heart out of it quickly. Ray Knight, I remember, was the first. He took a lot of the heart and quite a few nuts and bolts out of it. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Another great show. Thank you for listening, everybody. It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko, lucky enough to speak with Jeff Kallman on a regular basis. Be well. The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices, and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.